It's an exciting time to be a WWE fan right now. Triple H is in creative control, Raw and SmackDown has been more than watchable in recent weeks, and surprises and returns are happening frequently. But one of my favourite parts of the calendar year, which will hype things up even further, is the WWE Draft. And NXT 2.0, whilst very different from the black and gold era of NXT, still has its standout talents and superstars, some that Triple H may find will be very handy for a Raw or SmackDown moving forward as he looks to bolster the rosters in WWE once again. So without further ado, let's look at 10 potential NXT 2.0 superstars that could be called up to Raw and SmackDown in the 2022 WWE Draft. But before we get started, a couple of quick disclaimers with this video. I don't expect every single person mentioned in this video to be called up to the main roster, because that would be a lot of people, and yes, I'm saying a lot. NXT always suffers enough when they lose a lot of their top talent to Raw or SmackDown. And the other quick disclaimer is that teams and factions count as one pick. So without further ado, let's get straight into it and go with 10 NXT 2.0 superstars who could be moving to Raw and SmackDown in the 2022 WWE Draft. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe to SCW for more content just like this. And the first superstar we're going to talk about from NXT 2.0 is Bron Breakker, arguably the face of NXT 2.0 since it became multicolored and no longer black and gold. It didn't take very long for Bron Breakker to get into the main event scene. He even got a championship opportunity at Halloween Havoc last year against Tommaso Ciampa. Breakker would lose on this occasion, but it wouldn't take him long to become NXT champion for the first time, defeating Tommaso Ciampa at New Year's Evil. He would lose the championship, but he would regain it back on the Raw after Mania, of course one of the highest viewed Raws of the entire calendar year, and of course doing it on the main roster as well shows WWE's intention. They see Bron Breakker as perhaps one of the faces of the company for many years to come, and of course the fact he's been the face of NXT for the last 12 months suggests to me that he is ready for a Raw or SmackDown should he lose the NXT championship in the near future. At the time of recording, he is still NXT champion going into NXT Heatwave. When Breakker eventually does go to Raw or SmackDown, I expect him to become a big time deal very quickly, but I would start him off with one of the mid-card championships. Of course the IC title and US titles are starting to be featured more prominently. I think that Bron Breakker could become a champion of one of those titles around WrestleMania season, and perhaps we could be looking in around a year's time from now. I could see Bron Breakker being near enough one of the top guys going for one of the major titles on a Raw or SmackDown. But this video wouldn't be that interesting if I didn't go bold and predict which show I think Bron Breakker would go on. The fact is, looking at the rosters right now, I do think he'd be more fitting for SmackDown, but I'm actually going to predict him to go to Monday Night Raw. That's where he debuted before, as the fact that as well Raw is on USA, it's an easy transition to go from show to show. This won't be the case with every superstar, but the fact that he's sort of NXT 2.0 homegrown and not of the black and gold era, I think that that transition would make more sense at this stage. Plus, with the predictions I have in mind of who I think could move from show to show, I think Bron Breakker would be suited right now on Monday Night Raw. Next call up, and of course remember, groups count as one. We're going to talk about Toxic Attraction. That's right, Mandy Rose, Gigi Dolan and Jacy Jayne all to have moved up to the main roster. They have dominated the women's division in the NXT 2.0 era. Mandy Rose is still the NXT women's champion since winning at Halloween Havoc at this point at the time of recording, and of course Gigi Dolan and Jacy Jayne have been multi-time women's tag team champions. Of course, usually when losing those championships, winning them back very quickly, although on this occasion when they've lost them, they haven't managed to win them back, which for me is a sign that they will be eventually called up to Raw and SmackDown. Gigi and Jacy also were not included in the Women's Tag Team Championship tournament for Raw or SmackDown. Of course, that role was given to Nikita Lyons and Zoe Stark. For me, this reason is that they've not put Toxic Attraction in because they don't want them to lose at this stage. They want them to go into a Raw and SmackDown looking strong. They want them to actually be seen as challengers for those champions, not someone that perhaps jobs in a tournament in the first or second round, so they're not seeing someone who's capable of beating the champions when they debut. Before we predict which show all these ladies will be on, let's discuss Mandy Rose very quickly. A dominant NXT Women's Champion. Her character work has evolved, she's improved and gone to another level. If she was to go onto a Raw or SmackDown right now, I think that she would benefit a lot more, and I think she would have a much higher chance of being a bigger deal in the division than she was before going back down to NXT 2.0. So for me personally, I'm liking Toxic Attraction. I'm liking the work they do. They stand out. They are something different to the roster. Not everybody should be like a Toxic Attraction, but them as themselves, it works really well, and I think they could be standouts on Raw or SmackDown, particularly in the women's tag team division. I could see Mandy Rose going against Liv Morgan at some point in the future if she was to go to a SmackDown. She could even go against a Bianca Belair on Raw as well. But to see which show they will go on, for me, I'm going to predict Monday Night Raw for a couple of reasons really. First off, I think that they will be, again, that same transition to another USA Network show. I think it's an easy transition from NXT to Raw at this particular moment. My other reasoning for it, I'm going to predict that Control, that's right, Bayley, Io Sky and Dakota Kai, will be moving over to Friday Night SmackDown. Rather than having two big factions on one show, I can see Bayley's group moving over to SmackDown, and I can see Mandy Rose and Toxic Attraction being on Monday Night Raw, which will give them more TV time to work with every week and also be able to establish themselves and their characters now to a more mainstream audience. Next, let's talk about Carmelo Hayes, shall we? We can't forget Trick Williams either. I really like this duo together. Feels like almost the most complete act on NXT right now, in my personal opinion. When you look at Carmelo Hayes as an in-ring performer, he is established. Almost every match feels like 4 stars minimum. He's had some great encounters with the likes of Cameron Grimes, for example. Of course, he had the match with Roderick Strong, where he actually unified the North American and Cruiserweight Championships earlier in the year as well. When you look with on the mic with the character as well, you've got Trick Williams backing up on the microphone also. Trick is performing and improving in the ring as well. For me, this is an act that feels like it could be ready for a Raw or SmackDown moving forward. But for which show would I put these guys on? For me personally, I think both would benefit, but contrary to the other two so far, I would put Carmelo Hayes on SmackDown. Bear in mind the draft hasn't happened yet. I am looking at the SmackDown mid-card area, and I do think it could do with a bit more depth. I think Carmelo Hayes against Ricochet in particular is a match I really want to see. There are other talents like Shinsuke Nakamura, Madcap Moss, and plenty that Carmelo Hayes could be working with in the meantime as he establishes himself on that roster. And I think, like I said, with his in-ring work, with his character, how everything works, I think he's a good fit for the Fox network as well. So for me, Carmelo Hayes and Trick Williams, I'd put them on Friday nights. Next, let's talk Solo Sikoa. Now this one seems like the most obvious on this. The third Uce, a natural fit in the Bloodline. Yes, let's not waste any time. He would go on SmackDown. He wants to stand out on his own. I think he's done a good job of that so far in the last 12 months on NXT 2.0, having some great street fights, Falls Count Anywhere matches. He's still longing for that North American Championship, which I think still could happen before he's called up to a Raw SmackDown. But for me, Solo Sikoa would be a great fit to go into the Bloodline, especially if they want to just give an extra boost to Roman Reigns to keep him on top that bit longer. And I think as well, then you have a complete Bloodline as well. You could have Roman as the double champion. You can have the Usos as the unified tag team champions. Maybe Solo Sikoa could become the United States or Intercontinental or both of the mid-card championships. Move over Sami Zayn. Solo Sikoa is the one moving into the Bloodline. Next, let's talk about Santos Escobar. Now, I will talk about Legado Del Fantasma as a whole, but in the meantime, just to start off with, I'm going to talk about Santos Escobar on his own. And my reasoning for it, he was a part of the media coverage that was done for WrestleMania 39 this past week. He's going to be competing in NXT 2.0 at Heatwave, and of course, if he loses that match, he loses Legado Del Fantasma to the D'Angelo family, and he will be barred from NXT forever. He'll have to leave the NXT brand, which for me, I think is a natural fit that he could go to a Raw or SmackDown. One of the more seasoned veterans in NXT. He hasn't needed to be in NXT for a long time. He's a natural fit for a Raw or a SmackDown. He could create his own Legado del Fantasma on the main roster as well. I've seen plenty of times, including Underground Temple, who gets involved in a lot of the chats, saying that Humberto Carrillo and Angel Garza could be a good fit to go with Santos Escobar on the main roster. That could be something they could look at, or they could just have him go as a solo star. I wouldn't be against either at this particular point. Personally, for me though, I'd like him to keep Legado del Fantasma. If he could keep Joaquin Wilde and Cruz del Toro, maybe he can win on Tuesday, but choose to leave anyway. Maybe they're saying that he actually has conquered the D'Angelo family and he's conquered NXT. There's nothing left for that group left to do. They're going to move on to Raw or SmackDown when it comes to the draft. And of course, I'd like to see a feud against the Mysterios. I think that's a natural feud you could do. Perhaps there's a way you can turn Dominic as well on Ray at that point to join Santos Escobar, whether he's with a group or not. Because, well, at this point, I don't think Rey Mysterio and Dominic Mysterio, if they had to do a breakup, that Dominic should join Judgment Day. That's not a natural fit for me. I'd much prefer to see him go and join Santos Escobar in a group. That would be more of a natural fit for me. But to look then of a group, whether it's Santos Escobar or Legado del Fantasma, I'm going to move them to Monday Night Raw because that's where the Mysterios are at this moment. And I just think that group would fit really, really well there. Like I said, it's more TV time, 3 hours on a Monday night, and I do think for Legado del Fantasma, this would be a good move. Or Santos Escobar on his own. Next, let's move on to Indi Hartwell, a former NXT Women's Tag Team Champion with Candice LeRae, was a part of the group the way at one point with Johnny Gargano and Austin Theory as well. And of course, she was married to Dexter Lumis, Index, of course, who Dexter now returned to Monday Night Raw last week. There's been lots of rumours about Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae. And of course, Theory is already on Monday Night Raw. So for me, I would move Indi Hartwell over to Raw. She seems very lost in NXT since Index were split, where Dexter was released earlier in the year. Of course, Indi lost her tag team partner and best friend, Persia Pirotta, as well. So for me, Indi at the moment, she's sort of trying to find a feet in NXT again, and she's not really doing it. She's got a lot of experience compared to a lot of the women in that division as well. I just feel right now it would be an easy transition to move her over to a Raw or SmackDown. Like I say, at this point, I would go for Monday Night Raw, go and put her in with the Dexter Lumis storyline and see what we could do with that. Maybe we can get the way to reunite, who knows? But for me, I could see Indi potentially moving to Monday nights. Next, let's talk Cameron Grimes, because he's going to the moon. Under Triple H was, well, a very popular superstar that had lots of money. Of course, was involved with the $1 Million Championship storyline with LA Knight and the $1 Million Man. There's some of the most entertaining segments with Cameron Grimes. It was always used to perfection in NXT. He had a role of his own, was almost like an attraction watching without winning a championship for many, many years, until winning the North American Championship, of course, at Stand and Deliver this year. But of course, Cameron Grimes, he sort of dropped the gimmick almost in the last sort of 6 months or so. Of course, Triple H wasn't involved with NXT, become more of a Vince McMahon production. Now Triple H is back in the fold. Cameron Grimes has a different direction going. We're sort of lost character right now. Feels like he's lost everything. Could even be a victim of Joe Gacy. For me personally, I think he won't join Gacy's group. I think he'll overcome Gacy in a rivalry, perhaps even as well the Grizzled Young Veterans or whatever they call themselves right now. And for me personally, I can see Cameron Grimes being potentially called up to a Monday Night Raw or a Friday Night SmackDown. Again, would be solid depth for that mid card. He's very entertaining, very charismatic guy. I think he would get over with the mainstream audience. I think he's got what it takes. So for me personally, even if it's not a World Heavyweight Championship reign, I could see an IC title reign, maybe a United States Championship reign. Certainly, he would be someone that I think would command TV time each and every week. For me, Cameron Grimes, I would move him over to Friday Night SmackDown. Like I say, it's lacking a bit of depth in that mid-card area at the moment. So for me, I think Cameron Grimes on Friday nights would just be that comic relief and good in-ring quality that show could need. Next, let's talk about Grayson Waller, shall we? The Grayson Waller effect, Mr. Social Media himself, seems like a very modern superstar in WWE right now. I think someone that's definitely obnoxious and annoying as well, but of course, if you can get over on the mic in that sort of mid-style way, you've got a chance of having a long career in WWE. And I do think Grayson Waller, even though perhaps it could be slightly too soon for him right now, he has been given an opportunity to appear on Monday Night Raws in the past, of course, when he had his rivalry with AJ Styles at the start of 2022. He's been a standout in War Games, of course, jumping off the cage. He also jumped off the ladder at Stand and Deliver. That obviously didn't go too well for him at the time. But Grayson Waller, for me, I think is someone that's got a long future in WWE. A great mid-card, could add a bit of depth, like I say, right now to the IC and US title divisions. For me, personally, I could see him going to Monday Night Raw of the two. They've got a lot of great talkers over there right now, but certainly for me, it's a show right now, like I say, it's the same again. With NXT 2.0 being on USA, it's an easier transition at this point. I do think sort of some of the younger talent like that could do with going to Monday Night Raw right now to fill up that roster. I think Raw has a lot of the top stars actually going into the draft. I could see a few of those moving over to SmackDown in the draft to give their, their main title division a bit more depth, and it will actually allow people like Grayson Waller to get more TV time and get over in their own way. So for me, Grayson Waller is definitely one to keep an eye out for, and I think Monday nights would be the place that he could be moving to. Next, let's talk about Roderick Strong. Now, Roderick Strong, of course, has been someone that's been in NXT what feels like a lifetime, and of course, Triple H has always been a big supporter of Roderick Strong, a top indie talent, someone that's offered a lot of experience, of course, in NXT, especially for the young guns over the last 12 months. But of course, he was part of Undisputed Era, of course. He's been the leader of Diamond Mine. Now, to be fair, that group hasn't worked out to the same success as we were expecting when it first happened. But of course, with a lot of the changes of NXT since when that group started at the end of Black and Gold to where we are now, we're kind of lucky that that group still has got the success that it has, obviously with the likes of the Creed brothers. We've got Ivy Nile in there. We've now got Damon Kemp around as well. It's a shame we have not got the likes of Malcolm Bivens still around, but we are where we are. And of course, with Roderick Strong, he has requested for his release from the company before, but I believe now with Triple H in creative control at the helm, the fact as well he's the head of talent relations as well, I think Roderick Strong will thrive perhaps the most under Triple H, because Triple H believes in the guy to push him towards the top. Remember when there was the Cruiserweight Classic a few years ago? Roderick Strong was brought in to that tournament, which of course did get the likes of Buddy Murphy over at the time, but Roderick Strong was someone that could have been pushed to the top. If there wasn't an undisputed era at that point, I think Roddy would have moved on to a Raw or a SmackDown. I think Triple H would find a place for him. Again, he would add roster depth. He's been used as a mid-card champion previously. Let's not forget he's a former North American champion in NXT as well. So I think Roderick Strong would have a good chance of potentially getting over on a Raw or a SmackDown. For me, for placement, I think he's a good fit for SmackDown. I don't know why. I think just for that division personally, I think he would be good over there. We've got the likes of, Pete Dunne or Butch if you want. We've got Gunther at the moment. We've got Sheamus on the heel side, which of course if you want to be a babyface, they're great people for him to go against. If you go with the other side of things, we've got the likes, like I said, of Ricochet, Shinsuke Nakamura, some great talent to work with over there. And I think Roderick Strong could be a success on a SmackDown. So that's something I think we definitely could keep an eye out for, because right now his NXT run has got messy in the last sort of year or two. So for me, I think that's something that could be addressed by Triple H in this WWE draft. Last one of the 10, and I may have one or two bonus ones, so make sure to stick around to quickly discuss about those ones. But going to talk about Alba Fyre, shall we? Kaylee Ray, of course, in NXT UK, the longest NXT UK Women's Champion in history. She was dominant down there. It's clear that Triple H and Shawn Michaels had a vision for her being one of the top stars of the future in the women's division. She's come up to NXT. She had a fairly successful start. She's done okay in NXT, but I just feel like she's never really been put in a meaningful championship feud at this point. She's sort of in the background using her experience to help the younger talent, but she is ready whenever they want to put her on a Raw and SmackDown. She could be someone that could be a great talent, and for me, if she's not going to go into the championship picture in NXT, she might as well be called up, in my personal opinion, add some depth to the Raw and SmackDown women's divisions. For me personally, I'm going to predict her to move to SmackDown if that was the case, because right now that division could do with one or two extra talents in my personal opinion. But Alba Fyre, again, another one I'd keep an eye out for. So that's my 10 NXT 2.0 superstars who could be moving to Raw or SmackDown in the 2022 WWE Draft. Do you have one or two bonuses before I leave you? Of course you do. Let's quickly talk about them, shall we? Let's talk about Zoey Stark. Not someone who I thought would be potentially someone that could be a mover in this draft. Like her and Nikita Lyons, they have been put in the Women's Tag Team Championship Tournament. Now, of course, if they're successful in this tournament on the SmackDown side, well, they'd be Women's Tag Team Champions. They would be called up to Raw, SmackDown, you would imagine, going forward. But I don't think they're going to win the tournament. And I do think of the two of them, Nikita Lyons, I still think has got a bit more seasoning to do in NXT before she could be put on a Raw or SmackDown. There's certainly headlines and she certainly stands out in the crowd, but I don't think she's ready yet. Zoey Stark, on the other hand, is someone that Triple H was pushing heavily in the end of the Black and the Gold brand. Before getting her injury, it felt like she was meant to be NXT Women's Champion at some point. She had a storyline going with Io Shirai where they were a team. I imagine that if they didn't win the Tag Team Championships, that would have probably ended up in a breakup, and then Zoey Stark would have won that rivalry, and then she would have moved on to the top of the division to win the NXT Women's Championship. Now, of course, she has an opportunity at the time of recording to win said NXT Women's Championship. I still think that could be the case before being called up to Raw or SmackDown, but certainly, again, it's one to keep an eye out for because Triple H was a heavy fan of her during the NXT days. And surprise to some, the last one I'm going to talk about is Sanga, because Sanga was rumoured to potentially be called up to Raw and SmackDown before Vince McMahon retired. Now, of course, I'm sure the whole reset button has been hit. Now Triple H is in creative control. But Sanga, for me, of course, was a part of the team with Veer Mahan before they, Sanga actually did the social media leak about Keith Lee winning the the NXT Championship and North American Championship at the same time. Sanga, of course, though, now is back on NXT TV. Veer Mahan is doing nothing on Monday Night Raw. Perhaps maybe you reunite the tag team, give another team to the tag team division, give it some more depth. For me, with the draft, I'm going to go for SmackDown, mainly because I think Veer Mahan needs to move to SmackDown at this point. I think he's very much lost in the shuffle at this point. But that's my thoughts, that's my predictions. If you're wondering why I've not picked the likes of Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez, plenty of time on their side. I think they should go and win the NXT Women's Championship first in the meantime before being called up. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Have I missed anybody out? Do you agree with my thoughts? Do you disagree? I'd like to know who you think from NXT 2.0 could be on Raw or SmackDown through the WWE Draft. And if you enjoyed this video, then keep an eye on the channel as well, because more WWE Draft 2022 videos will be dropping on the channel. It's one of my favorite times of the year. So much content that comes out on this topic. In fact, I've got 2 more videos actually will be on the channel as well, including 10 superstars who should move during the WWE Draft 2022, and 10 superstars who shouldn't move during the WWE Draft 2022. So make sure to keep an eye out for those as well. But that's all from me. Anyway, like I say, like, share, and subscribe to this video. Check out the videos on the side of your screen right now. Take care. Have a great day. You've been watching SCW here on YouTube. Thanks for watching.